takes most autoimmune patients 5 to 7 years to get a diagnosis. And in that time period, you get told, I think this might just be anxiety. This is just stress. This is just being a woman, time after time. So you spend a lot of time tracking your symptoms, tracking what you think is happening with your body, and trying to essentially prove that you're sick so that somebody hopefully will listen to you and help you figure out what's going on.
How to be patient.
Welcome back to How to Be Patient. We are off to a screaming start today, and we have a lovely guest, the Alex Wildeson. She is known for her podcast, Calling in Sick, where she discusses a lot of chronic illness and patient advocacy, and also recently finished taping on a YouTube show from the UK yesterday. You did like 8 hours of filming for that?
8 hours of filming. It was my first TV show appearance. And to say I'm going to actually move to LA now and pursue a whole new career again.
You should. So how do your shoulders feel from carrying the weight of the show?
Pretty sore today, I would say. Definitely need to do some stretching. It's just so much pressure to be a star.
Yeah, okay. We'll get to unpack that later in the episode.
Didn't you have, Preston, weren't you a guest on Alex's show?
Yes, he was.
And what was that like to treat him?
He was an excellent guest. He did the intro for my episode for me. I get super awkward when I try to intro a guest live. And so he did it for himself. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm the smartest doctor
you'll ever meet.
I'm known
You'll
for my
never find
wellness
anyone like
content.
me. The best psychiatrist, the greatest psychiatrist. He knows
Iconic.
medications like anyone. So, yeah, but if you want to see me as a guest on Alex's podcast, I did it a while back, and that was actually a lot of fun. I got to go down to your studio, which is run by, of all people, Lance Armstrong.
It is.
So in a crazy crossover episode, it's
featuring
Lance Armstrong's office is in the building. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was like, this is the last thing I was expecting, but
Did you
it's a
leave
great
with
place.
a Livestrong bracelet?
You didn't.
This is awkward. Were there Livestrong bracelets that I could have gotten?
Were they there?
Probably.
Okay. Well, before we get into the episode, we always start with an icebreaker. And
I love that.
I was tempted to almost not do an icebreaker today, but I did kind of want to come up with a fun one. So the one that we're going to focus on is about the idea of invisible crowns. So health is often described as an invisible crown that is only seen by those who can't wear it. This is really born out of the idea that you don't appreciate what you have until it's gone. So I wanted to expand on that for the icebreaker and say, what are some invisible crowns that you've seen other people wearing recently that you don't get or you may have lost? And this could be health related or otherwise.
I think first one definitely is I'm missing my Norwegian crown. I'm pretty sure I was supposed to be the Princess of Norway, but I don't know what happened to that one. That joke didn't make Preston laugh.
That's okay. None of my jokes make Preston
I was thinking
laugh.
about a response to that.
That's the problem usually.
I was like, who's the current Princess of Norway? How do we usurp her?
He was processing.
I am
It takes him a beat.
57th in line, so we just have to kill 56 people.
Let's make that 56.
I think some invisible crowns that I have been not wearing is my transition out of a traditional finance career. Being able to work and have I think, pretty standard or typical life with pursuing what you studied in school is what everybody kind of aspires to do and follow. And when you get sick at a certain point, that might get taken away from you. And that's been the biggest transition for me in this last year is recalibrating my identity and understanding who I am without that crown.
So an invisible Patagonia vest, if you will.
Exactly. Patagucci, baby.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, forgive me.
You uncultured swine.
Do you have some of those vests with your company branded on them?
Yeah, from every company I've been in. We've got some Goldman ones, some oil and gas ones, some...
We get them for our hospital sometimes. I think it's just because the hospital deep down wants to be an investment
private equity bros.
We're getting there with hospitals this way.
Yeah, no, for real.
Yeah.
The Patagonia's become the new white coat. in a lot of ways.
We have to pay for our Patagonias for my training program, so we don't even get them for free, and they're like $160.
Yeah, we do too.
Rude.
Why are they so expensive?
I don't know.
That's my. No, just kidding.
That's my invisible crown.
That's my.
They're so
It's like,
expensive.
why did I have to pay for that?
Mine is honestly like being close to your friends, like proximity, and having time to hang out with them. So like when I see like other people on TikTok that are just like, they're literally just like making silly videos and like going out with their friends, you know, or like hanging out in their dorm together. Like those are the invisible crowns that like I wish I still had. I guess like I think I'm like really feeling the solitude that comes with like being an adult who works a job and goes home. And like the way that we could hang out in college is just not something you can replicate
No.
now in your 20s. Because even if people have time, people have other responsibilities, they have families, like no one just like shows up and shoots the shit like you did before. So I think I like didn't necessarily appreciate it. Was an invisible crown, right? Because I didn't appreciate it while I was in college, where like I was around all of my friends, like I was on a sports team, and you could just walk across the hallway and be close to like everyone that was in your network. So I think that's like been a crown I've been seeing recently, especially with like now that I'm an outpatient, I'm like treating a lot of college kids and grad students and people that like have these networks. I'm like seeing that crown a lot more often.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting crown. I have the opposite. I am so happy to not be wearing that crown anymore.
Being close to, or being
Yeah.
close proximity to a bunch of people.
It's too much pressure to socialize all the time, and I'm way too
Mm.
tired to do that. So I like a like once every other week, one time
Got it.
hangout, one time socialize situation.
I think Preston always wants me to be more vulnerable on the show. So I'm going to gift this to you because you're being vulnerable and because I think it's in theme with what we're talking about this episode of how doctors can kind of put walls up. I'm 30 and I think I like love a lot lot my day-to-day
Producers
life.
play the wah wah sound.
Preston,
Don't do that.
Sorry.
I'm 31.
You're going to
I'm
get
not
comments on
cool.
that now. You're going to get comments on that. Your age
I'm
is showing.
28. I'm
Yeah, you
You're a
ageist
child. You're a
Jesus.
child. I always call Preston 26. He's like, I'm not 26. But like a lot of my friends are like married and I am not. And I think it's something that younger me would have thought was like worked out in my life at this point. And so I think that's mine, is that I'm like, that part of my life is still a question mark. And I think it would feel comforting to have that part be settled. And at the same time, I like how my daily life is and I wouldn't change anything. But it's still something that kind of is also part of, I think, the adult structure that Preston was talking about of like,
I think so
how
too.
do you build your days and like, where is your relational energy focus and where is your community?
I think that's a really good point. I think that also just like graduates over time. It turns into, am I far enough in my career? When should I be buying a house? When should I be having kids? I feel like I'm deep in that one right now. Like all my friends are having kids, and I'm
Yep.
on a chemo protocol right now where that's off the table. But I would like it.
So listeners, what we're really describing here, Margaret and I, is our Erikson stages. And so we're both deep in the intimacy versus isolation stage. And then actually, I think, Alex, you progressed past us and you're in, what's it, like production versus stagnation or something?
Yeah.
You tell me. These are all new
Okay.
isms to me.
Erikson?
Generativity versus stagnation, I think. Because if I remember correctly, you've been in a pretty stable relationship. Like you're married for the
Yeah.
last 10 years. Like it's not this.
I was a child
This
bride. I got
question
married.
mark has been answered for you.
I got married at 24. I've
was
been
a
married for a very
child.
long time.
Oh, so you were a child bride.
I was a child bride. Cooper was a child husband. He
You were
was
child
23.
marriage. Oh,
Aw.
you guys were.
Baby.
You guys were. Preston's talking about Erikson's like child development things, which is like the theory that different children at different ages and then throughout life, adulthood, and it got eventually expanded, that there's these phases that are much shorter in childhood and adolescence. But then as you move into like your 20s, 30s, it becomes the question of, I will let you take this farther than Preston because I'm forgetting it off the top of my head.
So we're in intimacy versus isolation. So this is around like the mid 20s to early 30s, where you're really faced with the challenge. Those are the whole point of the Erikson stages. Is I see them like as like little barriers that you have to like kind of graduate to move on to the next one. And this is like forming long-lasting, deep, intimate relationships, which I think like Margaret and I have both done. But the final one of that the final boss is like
The
your
boss
life
test.
partner. The final boss of the Erikson stage is like finding your life partner or like who you want to spend your time with, or being condemned to isolation, which I mean,
Or having other like being at peace with what you want.
yeah. Sorry,
Some people do not.
That's what I
do
meant. I
want
didn't
to like
mean.
have a
You'll
life
either
partner, but some
find a
people do
partner
not,
who's
and that's okay
sad.
if you do not want that,
Yeah.
guys.
True.
I'm dead.
He's like, or and you see where Preston's at with that,
You'll get married or you die.
or we'll shoot you. Sorry, just kidding. We will
You'll
not.
get pregnant and die. Yeah.
Well,
And then Margaret's or generation versus stagnation is basically like you're now kind of starting slowly on this journey of like legacy building. So you're like, what am I going to be productive in? Like, what are the projects that I'm going to invest my time into? And then and then the later Erikson stages are a lot more around reflecting on like a fulfilling life and like having a legacy that you can be proud of.
Does it take into consideration like non-linear movements or like backwards?
now it does. Originally, like not as much. Although Erikson was like a good clinician, so I have a hard time thinking he would have been like so
A plus B
concrete.
equals C.
Yeah, but no, I
Mhm.
mean I think that's the issue because like, what if someone gets like divorced in their 40s
Yeah.
after doing like, do they then graduate back to
It's
right?
like
There is some issues with that, or
you
even
have to
like
load your previous saved game and
yeah, you just lose that part of your brain growth, and it's like, all right, sorry about that. Shoot
We're
some
gonna
ladders.
undevelop your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we should do an episode diving more into the Erikson stages. I don't know too much about them. But yeah, they're not as rigid as we apply them sometimes.
That's
So
good.
we are going to take a quick
Comforting.
break, but yeah, exactly. You still have a chance. But when we come back from our break, we're going to listen to Alex's story, talk about your journey from investment banking, which you alluded to a little bit, and then what it was like kind of transitioning from that into dealing with chronic illness and being a part-timer, I think sometimes even full-time patient.
Yeah.
And the challenges of communicating with doctors, some of these like frustrating phrases that they use, and then ultimately we'll talk about what it means to be a good patient, which I think is something that you talk about frequently as being a challenge for you.
Yeah.
So more to come after the break. And we're back with Alex Wildeson here to talk about your story. So full disclosure, I've watched both Succession and Industry. So that's
So you know my whole life.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, it's this documentary.
He can actually explain your life to you if you would like.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and I have a book on my shelf that's called Options, Pricing, and Volatility, and it's fat. It's huge, and I've read like 2 chapters.
I was
from
gonna say,
it.
have you read it?
That's a really good one to go right to Snooze Town with.
Yeah, and I'm like, I am now qualified to open up a Robinhood account and blow my entire life savings on options.
Gambling.
There's like no way that this can go tits up. Yeah.
No, never.
Margaret, at some point, I really want to introduce you to the annals of Wall Street bets and the entire
So-
Oh, I've been
subculture
there.
around there.
I was there
Oh,
during the
okay.
game. I've been
Oh,
there.
the GameStop.
Yeah.
Did you
I
make some
also-
GameStop money?
I did not. No, one of my friends did a little bit, not a ton. I do want to say though that when I visited Preston, I was in San Antonio for a wedding. He was like, "Here's my apartment," and he's like, "Yeah, look at all my books where I like is the background for the podcast." And I was like going through them, and I was like, "Oh, this one's interesting. Have you read it?" He goes, "No," and this happened like 4 times.
You just got outed so hard.
And
Preston's
so
a
I'm
fake.
outing you because we recently did an episode where Preston did read the entirety of a book, and I got texts from friends. I was like, "This was the best episode you guys have ever done." So I'm challenging the literacy.
Yeah. I need to have protected reading time more
You do.
often, I think.
Well, as a doctor, you have so much free time. So much free time for reading.
hmm
Hmm.
I do a lot of reading, but it's not like that. It's a lot of chart reading,
That's true.
a lot of
Articles.
abstract reading. Yeah. Wah, wah, boring.
Yeah, can we put that sound
I love
again that
it.
he used after I turned 30? Okay, moving
Yeah.
on.
You criticized my bookshelf, but you didn't go over and look at my Claro vinyls. That's the real problem.
Performative male final boss.
No.
Oh, I
And
just love
my
cats and
latte
my Claro
machine. I literally
vinyls.
have matcha
Latte
mix.
art.
I'm
It's
effeminate.
all contained. I have everything I need here. And I'm going to be shopping at Madewell later today, probably. I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that. We're gonna move on to Alex. So tell me about what it was like getting into investment banking. I think I want to start with like your journey to finance, because I think this is something that I think we find interesting in medicine because we never explore any of these careers. So how did
Yeah.
you know that you're first interested in pursuing finance?
I didn't independently. I have always been pretty good at math, not to toot my own horn, but that's really the only thing I'm good at. And when I was in college, I was thinking I'll go into marketing or advertising. All my friends were doing that. And my parents sat me down and they said, "We love you. You're really good at numbers. The creative part of your brain seems to need to develop perhaps more." My sister's an artist. So I was like putting two and two together that maybe they were gently telling me that wasn't a good fit for me. I think they were probably right. So took my first finance class, loved it. I'm hyper competitive. I played varsity soccer and lacrosse in high school. And when I got into all the finance courses, I was like, okay, I don't want to just take the finance courses. I want to be number one in my class. So I studied super hard. When I went through the investment banking internship interview process, that's fall of your junior year, I think. Yeah, fall of your junior year. I just went full tilt and ended up getting offers from all the banks that I applied to, and ended up going with a group that had spun out of Goldman. It was a boutique oil and gas firm in Houston. Was really excited. Everything about that investment banking lifestyle just felt like such high stakes and exciting. And it wasn't just clocking into a day at work. It was big stakes, like millions of billions of dollars that we were playing with essentially at 22 years old. So when I had my first internship, I remember my first week there, I think I was up to like 3 or 4 in the morning my first week. And I think most people at that point go, this is for me or this isn't for me. And I thought, I love this. Like, I want to do this forever. I'm going to be a managing director, which is like the highest you can get up at an investment bank. I'm going to be a career investment banker. And I put all my eggs into that basket. And my sweet boyfriend, now husband, was like, okay, this is going to be a rodeo. Let's do this thing.
It's certainly an option.
Just all those options and hedges. That was not a part of my life. You don't really do the options and hedging game when you were working in M&A. And that's what I did. So I did like mergers and acquisitions, specifically in the oil and gas space. And then even more specifically, because you can specialize much like you can in medicine, was doing like minerals. So all the rates that are underneath the ground. Started my career after my senior year of college in Houston.
Wait,
was
so
working.
I want to pause for just a second. This kind of like hyper competitive space.
Yeah.
That you went into. So it sounds like you've always had this competitive drive.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then just naturally the finance, like the ladder of getting into finance, like lent itself well to that.
It did, and it was really competitive at my school too. So within the finance major, there was something called the Alternative Asset Program, and that was the top 20 students in your class. And then within that, there was something called the Don Jackson Fellowship, and it was the top 10 students out of that pool. So I was a Don Jackson Alternative Asset Fellow at SMU and like helped teach them classes and was very competitive.
And how many students are in this pool?
Out of all the finance, gosh, I don't know. I want to say like there's maybe 400 or 500 kids in the finance program, and then boiled down to 20 and 10.
Wow. So you were selected one of 10 out of
I had
400 or 500 kids.
Yeah. So I interviewed through that. It was like a 2-week long process, modeling tests, stuff like that. So you do technical interviews, written interviews, financial modeling.
So clinically speaking, you were diagnosed with being a girl boss, is what I'm getting.
Or a psychopath.
Both and.
Both
We've learned anything, both and.
Both and.
And then you enter these interviews, which they're multiple rounds, right? And they really like funnel a lot of people. Like there's a huge bottleneck of like who actually makes it through.
Thousands of college students apply to be selected for 1 out of maybe 8 to 10 seats per investment bank. And that's like a big investment bank would be able to host that many analysts. So my year, it was 5 at the bank that I ended up at. So it's hyper competitive. You get flown into whatever city this bank is in. The first day that you're there, they take you out to dinner. They wine and dine you, basically try to get you drunk. And then they get you up in the morning at 6:30, 7 a.m. to start your interview process. Can you hang with the guys. So I got very sneaky at like taking my wine with me to the bathroom and just like dumping it out in the sink and chugging water in the bathroom and just trying to like play the game because I'm this tiny, very petite woman competing against very large men that were all interviewing for the same roles.
And they're all like, dang, Alex is one of the
Alex can
boys.
hang. Shots.
She's smart and cool.
So fun.
So already something that was requiring some disembodiment or kind of dissociation from your body, not in a clinical way, but in a, I need to do things secretly to make this even possible for me to not be in danger, let alone openly just be like, oh, I can't drink that much. I don't want to drink, which is, so it was already kind of present there beyond other things of having to stay up till 3 a.m. and maybe other parts of the formation into that career.
100%. And during all of this too, so I was born with mixed connective tissue disease or lupus. So I was on immunosuppressants. So I couldn't drink at that extent that all the boys could.
So you had already been diagnosed at this point?
With one
with lupus.
one of the 5.
Okay, so you had one infinity stone so far.
Exactly. I hadn't bossed up quite yet.
Okay.
But it was the interview process was fun. It was hyper intellectual people. So the banter was exciting. Everyone was really quick. Like, could you get to the punchline faster? Whatever. I felt so alive being in that environment. And when I got back to campus, I remember just thinking, like, I did it. I somehow, being a female who is chronically ill and doesn't look the part, like I have blonde hair and blue eyes and I look like a dumb blonde probably. I did what I had sought out to do. So I was very proud of myself, and I spent my senior year just kind of like enjoying that. And then when I got into my first week as a full-time investment banker, the charm of it all started to melt. And I realized like, oh, the internship was a lot of work, but still not the pressure or like the intensity or the aggressive nature that actually exists for full-time employees.
So when you're now in those like 3 a.m. scenarios that you said, and you said you loved it, what did you love about it?
I liked that there was so much pressure to get something done. So you'd get staffed on a project. It would be like, an example is a sale of a basin, like some oil wells in a basin. And you're trying to figure out what the best valuation possible is that you could wrap these into to potentially sell it to a buyer down the road. And you're competing with other investment banks to get hired for the project. So you had to financially engineer things, but know that that engineering could actually be proven out if you wanted to. And when you get hired for the job, then it's like cranking out these 300-page decks, massive financial models on a really, really short timeline, because of course all of the managing directors on the projects and whatnot would say, oh, we can get that to you tomorrow, without ever checking, is that humanly possible?
So they say, we'll get it to you tomorrow, and then they're like, Alex, get this shit done right now.
Alex, get this fucking done. And so then I'd be on my computer just modeling away, and my bosses would be in the game room playing Mario Kart, and I'd just be sitting there thinking, this is not exactly what I had pictured this would be like.
Yeah, and I imagine there's probably some scenarios where you spend a lot of time modeling off of just someone's like word or almost like tangential comment, and then find out that it was like totally not needed the next day.
Oh, the amount of
just
jam jobs that were a waste. Terrible.
And what was it like in that first year when things were falling away, being a woman in the space? You mentioned it in the interviews, but like you also I know a lot of the higher ups are usually men.
Yeah, I had 3 females that worked in my entire investment bank that were on the investment banking side. And they were all either analysts or associates. So there were no senior females at all. And what happened, unfortunately, is I got sexually harassed pretty bad while I was there. And when I went to go report it, there was nobody safe to turn to. And that ended up kind of backfiring a little bit. And I think it was probably part of the reason why I got so stressed in that job and ended up getting really sick and then had to quit. But when I first started too, so usually you have like 20 people on your junior team, analysts and associates. The entire associate class quit and walked out because oil and gas didn't perform well that year.
All 20?
Their bonuses weren't good. So they were all like, fuck this, I'll go somewhere else that's going to pay me better. they all left. This was a really like premier investment bank, and they knew that this stamp on their resume could kind of get them anywhere. So they all left, which meant all of us analysts then had to figure out, how the hell do we teach ourselves how to do the job? How do we actually get the work done that needs to be done? And how do we manage all of these different personalities that are really, really intense and very demanding? It was overwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah. So it's this story of like being selected almost as like the champion of a tournament is kind of how it feels to me when you're
Yeah.
describing the process of getting through internship. You're like the victor of Wimbledon in a lot of ways, and you try to come actually show up to your job to enjoy this, and then realize that like the trophies aren't there anymore, and it's a lot of these kind of dead end jam jobs, toxic
Yeah.
personalities, people leaving, sexual harassment, and then I can see how the luster of it all starts to fade away, especially if the drive is like feeling accomplished and like being the one who's selected. Because like
100%.
I've been in that spot too, not necessarily for investment banking, but there was a time in college where I was pursuing like the Rhodes Scholarship and the Marshall Scholarship.
Yeah.
And like Gates, Cambridge, all this stuff. And I remember like when I got selected for my Rhodes interview, I was like, oh my God, I'm like one of the chosen, you know, like I'm going to do it. Yeah. Like, like God has favorites and it's me, you know,
I am
like
the selected child.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm the protege from the beginning, or the prodigy, really.
Yeah,
And
it's a nice feather in your cap. You feel good.
it's like a drug.
It
In
is
a
a
lot of
drug.
ways. Like it's not actually like sustainable. It's just like you're just trying to inject your veins with the like heroin of feeling like accomplished and being selected out of a crowd. And I think
Success, and you keep chasing it too. So like when I was a first year working these crazy hours, that's when you also interview for your private equity job that's 2 years down the road. So it's all of these interview processes are very, very early, where you haven't even proven yourself out. You don't have the chops yet. You really don't know what you're doing. But they're trying to see, can you teach yourself on the fly? Do you have an attitude that flows with everybody else? And can you hang? Like, can you stay up late and then get up early and still crank?
the three
And
pillars.
That's
pretty
also
healthy pillars. So I went through private equity interviews, I call it like my freshman year of banking, my first year of banking, and ended up getting a job at KKR. So when
What is KKR?
Kravis Kohlberg, this is terrible. I don't even remember what it stands for anymore, but it's like one of the
Probably
largest
doesn't
private
matter.
equity,
Yeah. Okay.
one of the
I
largest,
see.
like most prestigious private equity firms in the US.
Wow.
I was going to join their minerals team, but around this time too, I decided, I'm not going to take Remicade infusions anymore. I can't take off that much time from work, and I can't take off the time I need to recover. So I switched to Humira instead, which is kind of like a lower grade, lower class immunosuppressant, and it did not work for me. I needed to be on that higher degree, and ended up getting a double kidney infection, bladder infection, and UTI, and like didn't go to the doctor because I didn't have time in my mind, and it had
Because
a
you had
massive
financial
flare up.
reports to make. Yeah.
Yeah, I was making decisions for my career instead of for me or my
how long
health.
would the Remicade, like when you were on it regularly, like what was the time commitment per month that it would end up taking to like leave your job, go get it? How long was the treatment? Like
It was not that bad. It was usually like a 6-hour infusion on one
So-
day. And then I would need 1 or 2 days to rebound, where I could probably just work from home. And that's ultimately what I ended up doing post-banking after getting sick, staying in private equity. But in my head, as a like bottom of the totem pole, that would be unacceptable. And we worked 100, 120-hour weeks. It wasn't like I had the weekend. I could do it on a Friday and use the weekend to recover. Like, no, I was in the office at 8 a.m. on Saturday. So in my mind, it didn't make sense. And I still wanted to like make top bonus to make it worthwhile. Because if you do the math for your dollar rate, when you're a first year banker, you're like, I am getting paid less than minimum wage. I'm working like a dog. This sucks. This only makes sense if I get paid a shit ton in my bonus. And your bonuses are like anywhere from 50% to 200% of your base salary. So like I was in my head, in order to make all of the sacrifices I was making for my health, for my relationship, for everything worthwhile, I had to get in that top bucket.
Well, and I can assume I also like beyond not having the time, beyond being in this environment where everyone, it is high stakes and it's somewhat artificial high stakes, right?
Completely artificial. Nothing is actually that
It's
urgent.
always been artificial.
But if you show your weakness or you show your like, it sounds like the kind of environment where if you show that, that will be taken against you. And not
Yes.
that like, even if there are good people around you, that will be seen. And we talk about this in healthcare sometimes, less so for like psychiatry, but like in med school, that like the hazing and the kind of like,
It's real.
people have been talking on TikTok recently. Someone made like a post about like, if you want to go into dermatology, don't show up to your sub-Is like with acne or something. And I know they've been
So
roasted. That's why I
rude.
will not name them. But like, they're learning their lesson not to say that kind of thing online. But
Good.
the secret curriculum is what people call it in healthcare, and I'm sure in your environment too. There's like all of these things that make it difficult to get care and to make it sustainable and not hurt your health in the long run.
Well, yeah, the culture rewards the people that make the sacrifice and don't complain and are like bragging about how late they can stay up. There was one week where I stayed up for 54 hours straight, and like I felt like I was wasted, just absolutely hammered at work. And my bosses were like patting me on the back, like, "Good job, kid! Like, look at what you can do. Blah, you should be so proud of yourself." And I was like, "I'm gonna die. I'm literally gonna die."
Yeah, this is what's rewarded.
Yeah. So that was a big red flag. And when I finally decided, like, I'm gonna quit this job, I think I had 3 months more to go and like set countdown clocks on my phone, and like Cooper was just encouraging me, and it was the most brutal long 3 months just to get through until that bonus hit my bank account. And then I did not go back to work. I had people mail me my stuff on my desk. I literally never showed up again.
Wow. You made a comment that you said after I got sick,
Yeah.
I still had to make these changes. And sounds like from what you described, you were already sick. So is there like a point where you see the turning point of like going from someone who's like, I'm working, I have this job, I just happen to have this diagnosis, to like, now I am sick?
Yes.
When was that turning point?
So growing up sick, my brother was also sick. He had he had brain cancer and epilepsy. And so it was just very normal or familiar in our household to be sick and still function. And like my dad went through testicular cancer and is one of the top surgeons in the entire world for pediatric urology. So I had all these models of, oh, like shit can happen in your life, but you just keep going. Like that's what we do. That's what our family does.
Yeah.
That's who we are. It's in our genes. So having mixed connective tissue disease growing up and having my brother have brain cancer and my dad have stage 3 cancer and almost dying, I was like, mine's just not that serious. Like, I'm
they're
fine.
They're just quirks. They're like birthmarks, really.
Yeah, it was like flare-ups where I'd be in a wheelchair for a month. Like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm 7 years old and on prednisone and taking Enbrel shots. Like, that's fine. That's normal. Probably needed to see a therapist at that age. That was fucked up thinking, obviously. Sorry if you're not supposed to swear on the show.
We haven't had a single not explicit rated episode yet.
Thank God. That's the one thing I can't break out of investment banking. I have the worst sailor's mouth, and like it's shocking to people because I look like a little angel child and then have a horrible swearing habit.
That's as much as you need to. We do, for sure. Maybe sometimes we do too much.
But just get it out. Fuck.
Get all the rage out. Fuck. Just need to do some somatic exercise and release all this anger, okay?
You know, there's a study that shows that when people are allowed to cuss, their perceived pain scores go down.
I fully agree with that. Dealing with CRPS, I
like,
swear,
I've
and I
known
feel
it my
better.
whole life, yeah.
But to answer your question, like, yeah, so I had this perception that I had something that was going on, but in my mind, it was the same as somebody having, like, I don't know, a broken toe that would just get better and you would forget about it. Like when I had flares, it was episodic and would get better. When I had all these infections that happened, it kicked off. That was probably when it kicked off the vasculitis, but I just didn't know. And over that next 12 months, I got progressively worse, and I'd never been sick to that degree. So ended up quitting my job in banking, went home for a little bit, moved to Austin sight unseen, and I'm not kidding, I slept 14, 15, 16 hours a day. I was so tired. I had a new puppy. Couldn't even get myself to get out of my apartment to go walk her. So I hired somebody to come and walk her twice a day for me. I was at a debilitating level of fatigue. And in my brain, it was, I'm recovering from investment banking. Like I just worked my ass off for the last year. Of course I'm tired.
120-hour weeks. Like who wouldn't feel tired?
Yeah, who's going to catch up to you? And, you know, I wasn't having a healthy lifestyle at that point. I was either having 8 espresso shots and working until 4 a.m, or I was taking 4 shots and going clubbing at the evening. Like that was the extremes that I was living in. So it was, I guess 2018 fall. I started going to my primary care physician and saying like, I just like feel weird and I don't think it makes sense. I had a rheumatologist here that was just super old school, like the kind of old school doctor that would say, you just have to get married and then quit your job and you'll be just fine. You won't have any autoimmune symptoms anymore. And I'd be like, okay, that doesn't seem like a great solution.
Meanwhile, we
He
know
was
the
picking
exact
up on your
opposite is
Erikson
true.
stages. Yeah. he was-
So now you understand why
True.
now you understand why I was a child bride, was just trying to follow my
Yeah.
doctor's orders, be a perfect patient.
He said this is the cure to lupus. Like, I
It's
don't
a cure-
know. I don't know
It's
what
a secret cure.
secret.
Yeah,
Don't
he's
let
onto
pharmaceutical
something.
companies
Yeah.
know.
Big pharma doesn't want you to know.
Be a child
Getting
bride.
married and getting pregnant. Those are the two
Yeah.
cures to
Well, I
lupus.
mean, being pregnant is actually protective against autoimmune stuff, which sadly, but only
It's
during that time.
true. It's
Sorry,
true.
unrelated. I'm sorry. I work in perinatal, so I'm like, well,
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
We'll gab about that. Don't worry.
Yes.
So I finally get kind of through the shuffling, see a dermatologist, have a lump on my foot, get a biopsy, and have like that heart fall out of your body phone call. Hey, you have this really rare disease. It's degenerative. We got to do a lot of testing. You know, some people die within 4 months. And 24-year-old me, who had just quit investment banking, had started working in a private equity job that I thought would be less work in Austin and ended up being the exact same amount of work because it was another Goldman spin-out company, was like, okay, do I quit my job? Do I go travel the world? What do I do with this information? And as I'm sure you can imagine with what I've shared so far about myself, I didn't do any of that and was like, I'll just work harder and it'll be great. And this will be exactly what I'm supposed to do with my time.
So what was the diagnosis you got at that point?
Polyarteritis
Got
nodosa.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
You
So,
mentioned vasculitis.
and I unfortunately just like didn't have the best care team in Austin when I got this diagnosis, besides my dermatologist, who is still one of my doctors today, is like my quarterback for my health. She's the one that helps me make decisions, like FaceTimes with my family, was invited to my wedding. Like, we love her. She's phenomenal. But she helped kind of guide us through that first year. And Cooper and I got engaged. And I was going in and out of the hospital, like 10 different hospitalizations. And that first year, started methotrexate, was on like 100 milligrams of prednisone every day. Nothing was working. Like, we kept throwing stuff at it. And after my wedding, right before COVID lockdown, I got really, really sick. So I was in the hospital, and
So your wedding didn't cure.
my wedding didn't cure. It
Yeah,
actually made me like a lot sicker.
That first rheumatologist is like,
Damn it! I could have sworn.
he's like, you just didn't get married hard enough.
He's like, you need to have
Yeah.
you thought of cooking more for your spouse?
Exactly.
He's like housewives in the 50s.
He's like, it was a New Year's Eve wedding. That just like that wasn't
He's
going
like,
to be.
and
a
it
good
rained.
wedding.
You undid it all. Actually, you got
Mhm.
jinxed. Okay, sorry.
Exactly.
Continue.
So basically, like got sick, but kept working during all of it.
Mhm.
And looking back, I wish that I hadn't, but also I wouldn't change things because it's gotten me to where I am today. But basically, the last 5 years was this story of me going on pretty aggressive chemotherapies. I've had over 10 surgeries now at this point. Lost and gained all the prednisone weight, lost all my hair, grew my hair back. Kind of went through the rigmarole of a pretty aggressive autoimmune disease, ended up developing some comorbidities like complex regional pain syndrome. That has all of its own stories that are difficult. Had a botched spinal surgery where I was paralyzed for a little and then had to have a laminectomy and regain all of that. But basically, TLDR, went through my finance career, got really, really sick, tried to fight it. And finally, after this botched spinal surgery, had the come to Jesus aha moment of, maybe I need to like stop fighting the flares and just flow with them and like stop trying to force myself to fit into this life that I thought I was supposed to have or could have. And maybe I'm supposed to just take a deep breath and figure something else out. And that's not failing.
Mm-hmm.
So, how long did you last in Austin, fighting these flares, still trying to stick with private equity or finance?
I had a 8-9 year long career in finance with all of it going on.
You did this for 9 years.
How long have you been out of it for?
I stopped finance like March of this year.
Oh, okay.
Pretty recently,
It's
yeah.
recent.
Pretty recent. No, I stopped corporate finance like a year ago, and then ended up launching a consulting firm with my sister that was like more venture capital related, and then I've taken a step back from that too.
Mm.
And how has it been in the last year, like stepping back from it and trying to kind of live out this different path, or at least a different pace of path?
If I thought redefining my identity was just like getting PAN was hard, having to step away and pivot my entire career in life was way, way fucking harder. So much of how I viewed success and like a good life was tied into my performance at work. And like I was always
Mhm.
a 4.0 student. I was always in the top bonus
You're a
bucket. Like
winner. Like, you identify as a
I was a
winner.
winner.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do anything else. Like I couldn't go out drinking. I was on Cytoxin chemotherapy. I couldn't
Yeah.
travel. I was so sick. Like all I had that was bright spots in my life were like my marriage
Mm-hmm.
and my job, because I couldn't see my family and I couldn't socialize and see my friends. And that was it. So I threw myself really, really heavily into my work, for better or for worse. So having to take a step back from that, and it not being my chronic illness, but being the spinal surgery, had so many frustrations because it felt like somebody else had taken it away from me
Yes.
instead of me being able to make the decision, which I probably, like, candidly, I probably needed to make anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't a good thing for me to continue doing.
So ultimately, your botched spinal surgery was like the coup d'etat for your finance career.
Exactly.
That's maybe the spine surgeon was looking out for you. They were like, "This is
By
someone who
botching, he
needs to
botched you
slow
on
down."
Yeah, he was like, this
Let's-
girl really
let's
seems like
make
she
her
just
sit
needs to
down
get
for a little bit.
married.
He was like, you know what? She will listen if I do this. But
Exactly.
one of the things I talk to with my like patients with chronic pain often, from like the model of acceptance and commitment therapy, and then I used to work in a pain clinic in med school, but is like holding the duality of
Yes.
like the grief of what you're going through and what other people aren't, and how do we validate that and have compassion for it, and
And
how do we build something like a life that feels meaningful and connected to values in a different way, and have some
100%.
control. And it sounds like, the surgery not being in your control and it kind of feeling like someone else was taking it away, and then your work being a place where you could exert some predictability and control in your life and that you were good at it for your identity, taking that away in the long run is probably a good thing, but in this like intermediate run is probably really difficult because it's further uncertainty.
Very much so. And I always think like when these catastrophes happen in life, they never, I mean, I'm someone that likes to derive meaning out of everything, for better or for worse, but nothing ever makes sense in the moment. It sucks, it's heavy, and it's hard. You have to feel it. You have to feel it all. But down the road, I think it's easy to look back and be like, well, maybe it was what had to happen in the most fucked up way possible, but was I going to stop working in finance, and would I have made my chronic illness worse?
Yeah.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
One of the metaphors I use for a lot of my patients with grief and when they have a life-changing illness is some of what you just said, but also I use the metaphor of like, I have them do a meditation where they imagine like an asteroid comes and makes a crater and it destroys everything around it. And they really liked that area. And what we do in the beginning of therapy is kind of just sitting and looking at the crater and noticing it and talking about what happened. And then at some point, there may be little interesting new flowers that grow along the side of the crater. And we can appreciate those flowers and at the same time say, I wish the crater wasn't here. I wish the
Yes.
asteroid hadn't happened. And
Yes.
these are really interesting flowers that I wouldn't have loved without the crater coming.
I think that's a really good analogy, and I think that resonates.
Sorry, Preston. I know you're guiding this episode, but that is my favorite
no.
metaphor to use.
I was just literally I was like, she has like a crater in her spinal lamina. Like
I do. I'm missing some bones.
like she is the crater. You know what I mean? Whoa.
I am the crater.
And the asteroid. I am all of them.
I am God.
And the
God,
flower.
God,
I'm the
God.
crater, the asteroid, and the flower.
Yes.
I'm both
Behold.
Mario and Wario.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Bowser and Mario.
But that is ultimately what made me pivot my career. Is I was sitting at home on medical leave, depressed as shit, being like, gosh, I just worked so hard in chemotherapy, got myself into remission, and this horrible thing happened. What am I doing wrong? Why does this shit keep happening? And ended up just like started posting online, and it went pretty well. And I was like, this is really rewarding and really fun, and has that competitive feeling that I liked about finance, but in a really low stakes way where there's no urgency. And well, I guess there is if you place it on yourself, and sometimes I have. But being a like chronic
Which you
illness,
can win at social media too in a lot of ways. I know what you mean.
Yeah. But then also like having the layer of being a chronic illness creator, the things that make me feel really good aren't necessarily, and this is with a grain of salt because the metrics still make me feel so happy when I do well. But when I get like the DM from someone's husband that says like my wife has completely changed her outlook on living with a chronic illness and like we're going on dates again, that feels really, really good. And I'm like, I would rather chase that all day than this career that I thought I wanted to have in finance.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for going through your like inspiring and beautiful story with us. When we come back from this break, we're going to talk a little bit more about what it's been like for you engaging with all of these doctors. And then we're going to do a quick segment where we're going to bring in classic doctor phrases into the workshop. And Margaret and I are going to try to make them better or just nix them all together. So I shouldn't call them vacations, but I've noticed that you since I've known you for the last like 2 months, you'll go on these trips to like different places. I think you went to UPenn or Chicago. Tell me, like, what are these like for you to have almost like an army of doctors across the country?
I love it because I'm famous, obviously. I feel really, growing up in a medical family, I feel really grateful that even though I have this very rare, terrible disease, I can still give back to the medical community and like help move that needle for the next patient that gets this, that doesn't fit the criteria. Most people with PAN are like 80-year-old white men, and I'm not that I know of. So being able to be in, not yet, still time.
Anything is possible.
It's 2025, baby. Yeah, being able to like be in clinical studies and participate in research has been really meaningful to me because it feels like there's purpose behind the struggle, I think. I'm
so
a big
that's what these trips
fan.
are. They're to participate in large national clinical trials.
Exactly. Yes. So like Cleveland Clinic, NIH, UPenn, UT Austin, UT Southwestern. Those are like the areas that I go to that I get looked at, poked and prodded, and asked a bunch of questions. And it feels good to be able to give back like that.
And like among this, having like a whole team here in Austin too, and the amount of emergency department visits that I'm sure you'd rather not try to like tabulate. You've posted about this a lot, and something we talked about behind the scenes was this kind of the frustrating communication or sometimes like vague runaround that you get when you're working with doctors and trying to plead about your pain. So I asked you before this episode to kind of, I think noodle was the term you used on like some of the phrases that you think are either unhelpful, frustrating, or you're like, what does that mean when you get them from a doctor? And I think this is like a fun chance for us to do this because it's not often that I get to be a doctor who talks to a patient who isn't my patient. You know, like this is kind of like, it's really just like
you're welcome for my
the
friendship.
council of the minds here. Yeah. So let's take a chance and look at some of these phrases, which I feel like I'm afraid I may have used at some point, and Margaret and I are going to try to reconstruct them.
I like that. I'm very excited because I think they're very well intentioned to just arm wave at the front. I think nobody comes at a patient with the intention to like piss them off or make them feel sad or unseen. But there is medical jargon that will naturally make somebody feel that way. I think like the most comical one is like when you get a scan and it just says like unremarkable. You're like, I'm unremarkable.
Insignificant.
I thought I was really remarkable.
So just looking at this list that you gave me, the first one that comes up is your labs look normal. Tell me more about why that's frustrating or
so it
doesn't
takes
resonate with you.
Takes most autoimmune patients 5 to 7 years to get a diagnosis. And in that time period, you get told, I think this might just be anxiety. This is just stress. This is just being a woman, time after time. So you spend a lot of time tracking your symptoms, tracking your what you think is happening with your body and trying to essentially like prove that you're sick so that somebody hopefully will listen to you and help you figure out what's going on. So it's kind of an ongoing joke in the chronic illness space that you get labs back or procedures back and they just say normal or nothing. And a healthy person would be like, oh, phew, like, thank God I'm okay. A chronically ill person's like, great, now we're back to square one. I have no idea what's going on. My body's feeling terrible, but presenting medically normal. None of this makes sense. How am I ever going to find a provider that's going to believe me and take care of me?
So there's an undercurrent or an implied statement, which is there's no reason for you to be in discomfort like this.
And I do think, like, unfortunately, a
your
lot of
labs look
times
normal.
when tests come back normal or labs come back normal, some physicians do say, come back if you get worse. There's nothing I can do, which is, I think, very brave to say, but also really frustrating.
Yeah. I can see how obviously it would be frustrating and confusing to say, like, I have noticed a difference in my body, in this concrete time period in this way. And especially when it's given, I mean, I can see that sentiment being given contextually in a way that does not suck as much.
Yeah.
And I can see it being given as sucking a lot. So I think one way you could say it is I could say the sentence, your labs look normal. However, the labs that we have are the things that we know how to look for. Many people, like you say, go a long time without having signals that we can measure. And so I know that this is still happening. I want us to approach it this way. And I want you to see me again in a couple months. And I'm going to I'm going to read on this and talk to one of my colleagues who works in this to see if there's any other further testing we should do. The suck way would be, these look normal. You seem kind of anxious. I'm going to refer you to psychiatry.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is, and I have had way too many providers say that to me where I'm like, I'm already seeing a psychologist. I know I've got stuff going on up here too. Thank you.
I think the whole like your labs is such like a generic vague thing to say. Like my first thought is like, well, which labs? Because there's almost always like another lab that can be drawn, or like at what point are we calling it with like we've done the labs? You know what I mean? Because I think in most scenarios it's like they've done a CMP, a CBC, maybe they've looked at like one or two generic antibodies like an ANA or something like that. And that hasn't revealed anything, but it doesn't mean that there aren't more labs to be drawn. And also like doesn't mean that we haven't have exhausted all of our like diagnostic capability. That's rarely the case.
I'm going to clinically disagree with you though on this right now.
Sure. What do you mean?
I mean, I think one, as psychiatrists, we very rarely use labs. So Alex, you don't know this, but my dad is a retired primary care doctor who worked in like systems level management. So like, I think, yes, that it's like there could be further expertise that someone needs. And I also don't want to engender more distrust in like, if someone sees a rheumatologist and they're like, these are the labs you need and these labs are normal, I don't know. I think there's already this myth out in the world right now that's like, you should be getting all these labs that are not evidence-based labs. And so that's why I'm pushing against you, Preston.
I agree, but I also think there are labs that I do think like some of rheumatology is antiquated to be candid.
I could see that. Yeah.
Part of that is when we look at labs, it is against that whole pool of people that have gotten that lab. And I do think as we progress in medicine, it's going to become more individualized.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at your labs over time and you are seeing variations, even if it's quote unquote in the normal range, unremarkable, that should be a conversation.
Totally.
And I will say, like, unfortunately, those are the things that get missed. And that's why a patient often will then get way sicker. And that's when they get diagnosed instead of, hey, I've been looking at your trends over time and I noticed like, you know what, you're still in the safe zone, but your inflammation markers have been going up and up and up every single time we tested. We should have a conversation about this.
Yeah. I definitely think there's the question of like, if you have someone who's not doing standard of care medicine, and I don't disagree with you that there are people who are not doing standard of care, they're not following the 2025 guidelines. And there are tests that can like, not in your specific conditions or anything, but there are one of the things I'm thinking about is there's been a lot of stuff around like getting cortisol levels tested. And one of the things we know is that they're not replicatable, but people are being told to do them. And then they come to us and they're like, they told me this, but it's not indicative over the like long term of finding in a population an illness and an illness we can treat, which you're nodding
Agreed.
and you know. But I just say that to say,
It's the online healthfluencers that have zero
Yeah.
training at all. Not to shit talk anybody with the medical
Yeah.
medium does that a lot.
but if you're not being heard by like, right, if the rapport is bad, regardless of the labs, then this is going to make any of this not great. But I think from the medical side, one of the things I worry about is thinking about splitting in healthcare, and that like are people who do I know people who do simplified labs that are so intelligent and can, if they had the time, would tell every one of their patients like, here's why we're doing this in this way, and here's like actually the percentage based on this study that da 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 da.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's the majority, but I feel like that's also one of the issues right now with healthcare is like, how many bad actors are there? And I can't know, right? I can only know what I do and what some people do.
Yeah. Well, and I also think like for people like y'all who are clearly passionate about what you're doing, you are working in your field beyond what is asked of you in your career. This podcast, talking about things online. I think that unfortunately, like from the patient experience, there are more, maybe I was just naive when I was younger, but my experiences with providers has astronomically gone downhill. Like when I was younger and would have a flare up, it was, I could go to the emergency room and somebody would say something positive and it wouldn't be like, you're faking it.
Right.
If I go to the emergency room now and it's not my normal emergency room where there's a protocol in my file, it's, you look fine, you are faking it. And I don't think that's lazy medicine. I just think it's like a really overrun system. And it's a lot of patients that have a pressure of urgency to figure out what's going on with them for things that are not urgent.
Yeah. I mean, you also mentioned that your dad is this like doctor and it's really, really great. I once had a friend tell me who was a nurse that she was like, Maggie, I love working with your dad, because she had a period of time when she was studying that she didn't. She goes, and he's not
The
the
standard
average.
doctor.
And maybe
Yeah.
you've experienced that as well, of coming,
Yes.
growing up and also moving from child-based medical care and pediatrics to
Yes.
adult care, which is a very different world.
100%. I mean, growing up with a parent that's in medicine, it's, you get protected to some degree. You see the best doctors without having to go through the rigmarole of trying out different specialists and seeing who's good and who's not. Like your dad knew, oh, those two over there suck. We're not going to send you to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what I was saying with the labs thing was that you can say your cell lines look normal and your electrolytes look normal, but they don't explain your symptoms.
Yeah.
That was like the alternative phrase that I would offer. And I think that's a way of saying like you shouldn't have any reason to have this pain or discomfort. So
I think that's perfect. Like as long as you just don't disqualify the patient's symptoms, then they walk away even with unremarkable labs feeling still seen and heard.
yeah, I think it helps to just specify which labs, even without going into the necessary jargon, but like we looked at the number of red blood cells you have. Those are within the normal range, but that doesn't mean there's not other places we can look. So the next one is you'll just have to learn to live with it. And that's, I feel
It's
bad
so
because I
bad.
think that's in a nicer way, that's been a lot of like what news that I've delivered to people. And in a lot of ways is kind of like a fundamental tenet of acceptance and
illness.
commitment therapy. Yeah, it is. So
Yeah.
what are like some of the situations where you've been told that's
A lot of it's like pain related, I would say, of there's not really anything else we can do. You know, we've tried all these different procedures or medications and it doesn't seem like any of them are working for you. So I think you're just going to have to like learn how to cope with it. And they're not wrong. Like there's not much you can do with CRPS. I do have to cope with it, but it makes me feel very isolated or alone in that battle versus like, hey, when this flares up, I'm still on your side and we'll still talk and try to figure out something to make you more comfortable versus like, sorry, you're fucked.
yeah, like what are you going to do about it? You are going to have to learn to live with it. I think my proposed like change to that is that like we're going to have to figure out a way to live with this. And so even just replacing you with we is acknowledging like it's not on you alone to figure out how to cope. I'll help you figure out ways to cope. And we'll kind of be planning this together with also the knowledge that this crater isn't going to go away.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like it's the we-centered, it's the team, it's the you're not alone. Goes a really long way, especially for new, like freshman chronic illness patients that don't know who to trust, what to trust, don't really know the different personalities that are out there in the medical space. Having someone give them an indication that they can still go there when shit hits the fan, that means the world.
I mean, I think similar to what we were talking about earlier, the like holding the both and then also holding, although the uncertainty of medicine is like in terms of like we don't know everything yet, is a frustrating thing in chronic illness. I think can also be a space utilized for hope of like,
yes,
I'm going to keep reading. Like I am on your team, and my job is to kind of be looking at all the kind of the outcoming research articles and bring things to you when I think they could help. So we may not have, we'll be in this together, like Preston said, and we don't know what 10 years from now or 5 years or a year from now is going to look like.
That was the best piece of advice that my dad gave to me during my chronic illness journey was there's someone in med school right now that will develop a medication that will change your life in 10 years. And that gave me a lot of hope, like just knowing that what's here right now is not what is here forever. Like maybe chronic illnesses aren't chronic forever. We don't know. Maybe that's naive also. I don't know.
No,
I
think when I learned, I find the neurobiology of pain actually something that can be incredibly hopeful in a lot of cases, in that like there are things that we do that impact, for overbroad term, the nervous system, but like with central pain sensitization and then different things that can actually really help, and that having an organized approach can be really effective for a lot of chronic pain things. Does it make it go down to zero? No, but we know that we're plastic, and I think it can be one of the jobs of the provider in settings of chronic pain or chronic symptom, whichever it is to hold that time, that frustrating timeline, but of real improvement for the patient when they're in the middle of pain and kind of executive dysfunction, because your brain's on fire at that point. You don't have the cognitive capacity when you're in an acute flare to hold that.
You don't. You really don't. And I think you're also saying something else that I really like too. And that's how there's other things that are available to help with pain, like pain reprocessing therapy. I think a lot of new patients get hopeful that there's just a silver bullet, just one pill that they can take, and the burden's not on them to make all these changes to their life that already feel so overwhelmed by their condition. But a good provider, I think, will help you reposition that as like, yes, you have to do more and make these changes, but there is a goal and a reason why, and you will feel most likely better from doing those things. I think it's getting comfortable
a really
and having
important
to
reframe, because people want that silver bullet like you talked about, and it makes them very vulnerable to snake oils that promise to be that one thing.
Yeah, big time.
So the next one, I think this is a low-hanging fruit. Probably should have started with this one, is you're young and healthy otherwise.
I think that one's perfect. And then tell them to get married.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love when my providers tell me I'm otherwise healthy, and I'm like,
cool.
What's otherwise?
You're like, your leg
I don't have cancer,
off,
I guess.
Your leg fell off, but otherwise the other 3 limbs you're good to go.
Yeah.
I guess so. That's our standard.
That's classic silver lining. You don't do it to someone that you're trying to empathize with. It's essentially like just an invalidating statement to be like, look on the bright side. Yeah.
At least you have a husband and you're not like dating right now. I'm like,
period.
So like outside of your lupus, outside of your polyarteritis nodosa, outside of your complex regional pain syndrome, you're otherwise healthy.
And endometriosis, like outside of those things.
Endometriosis is so evil. There was a TikTok the other day that was like, a woman had been hospitalized because it had somehow migrated to like into her like leg and had like caught. Did you see that video? It's like, terrible. This is so evil. Why does this illness afflict us?
And it's so under-researched. It's so sad. Like it can go anywhere in your body.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. It is evil.
Wow. Well, okay. That was all I had for the unhelpful ones that I could pull away quickly. And then the next one, this will be rapid fire section. We're so good at this. This is explaining medical jargon. So the first one you had was differential diagnosis on there. When were you when you first heard the word differential diagnosis?
It was my dad.
You're
My dad
five,
was
and he's like, differential diagnosis, you're annoying.
My dad was like, okay, so just ask them what the differential diagnosis is if they say you're fine. Okay, Dad, they are like really looking at me funny when I'm asking that, and I don't know what it means.
Mhm. So for anyone who's listening who's a patient hasn't heard this phrase before, differential diagnosis is just everything it could be. Everything I reckon it could be, possibly.
Open up that brain.
And a good
Yes.
differential includes the like, here are the things from your history and physical and labs that make me think it's this. And here are some of the things that make me think it may not. And each one has that in the list.
Mhm.
And it's not a great question to ask every provider, I would say, but when you have a provider that keeps going like, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, but
Mhm.
you have like, great example, post-COVID, I developed dysautonomia.
Mhm.
Had a heart rate that would skyrocket to like 200 beats per minute randomly, and then standard bradycardia where my heart, it was like 37 beats per minute.
Oh, wow.
I was so tired
Girl,
all the
you're
time.
down bad.
Lance Armstrong's jealous.
Was down bad, I know.
He's like,
I'm
how'd you
such an
get so low?
athlete over here. The EP cardiologist was like, yeah, you're just like a young, healthy female. You're fine. And at this point, I like already had PA, already had all this stuff. And I was
You're like, have you read my
Mhm.
chart?
like, I'm really not. There's really something going on. What's the differential that all of this
What's the
could be?
differential?
Tell me. Appropriate setting, not an appropriate setting in the ER when you're having a flare up. Like, they're not going to know. They don't know your history.
Mhm.
They have someone who's bleeding from a gunshot wound to deal with.
Yeah. I think, and Margaret, I'll let you kind of answer this too. If a patient asks me, what's your differential diagnosis, like point blank like that, and I don't have rapport with this patient, I think it can, like,
Put you on edge.
it feels like they're trying to challenge your thoughts.
Oh,
At least that's how
yes.
it could come across. Have you even considered, X, Y, and Z? Because I think one thing that makes providers get defensive is when there's always the sister in the room who's on her like second year of PA school, and she's like, I'm gonna make sure all the doctors are doing everything right. Or
I'm going to
it's
post that
like,
clip so
the,
Preston gets canceled on
I love
talking
it.
or
about
it's, the
mid-levels.
brother in nursing school or something, and they're like the creatinine's low. Like, what are you gonna do about that? And
They're
you're
like,
like,
I'm here for the suicidal
it's a good thing
ideation.
it's low. Like, yeah, let's.
That's out of my scope.
I'm like,
And so maybe I need to like just check myself when someone asks that. They're probably just trying to like use medical jargon to communicate with me.
I think they're trying to get to the same level. To
yeah,
level
like
set with you.
yeah, exactly. And it's strange, I think, that if the patient just said, what are all the things that you think this could be? Or like, what are all the things you're considering? I feel like a lot of providers would take that more graciously than like, what's your differential?
I could see
Outside of
that.
this, just like the amount of times we get pimped and are like in
we
stressful
got to stop
situations.
using that word, my guy.
So tell me, how often are you getting pimped, Preston?
Yeah. Well, it's when people ask us like intense questions
Yeah.
in the clinical setting.
Oh,
That's
That's a different
classically like called
pimping.
pimping. Yeah. But like, what's your differential is like something that kind of like triggers your fight or flight when you're in these
Oh.
scenarios.
kind of from like when you're like in training
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
with
Like
an attending.
like that scene from Whiplash when he's like going up to the drummer and he keeps slapping him in the face and he's like
Yes.
faster and beats and differently. It's like, what's your differential?
Yeah.
What do you think it mean? What's
Tell
your
me.
can't miss diagnosis? You know?
Patient's coding, tell me.
Yeah, exactly. So when you get asked those questions, you're like, oh god, and then you go into see the patient. The patient's like, what's your differential? And you're like, not you too.
That makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I think if patients had that understanding or perspective, they'd be like, oh God, I don't want to make my doctor feel that way. And I think they
Mhm.
do it because they think if I sound smart enough, they won't write me off as like just having anxiety
Absolutely.
or like just
yeah.
making it up.
I think also like, we glibly mentioned like private equity in healthcare and healthcare systems and overload. I think one of the things that can be hard for clinicians is a couple things related to this. One is like if there are 50 people in the emergency department or even if you're a primary care doctor and you have 15 minutes to see each of your patients because that's the way that you can bill for Medicare, if Medicare still exists, whatever. And they can be the best person ever in those 15 minutes. And I've seen a lot of patients have understanding of the system and have grace for people that not everything can get done. But I've also seen a lot of patients who do not.
Those patients make me mad.
Yeah.
Candidly.
And like they're similar to us being like, and there are doctors that make us mad. There are providers that make us mad.
Yeah.
The second thing is the kind of like true tension between I'm in my body, so I know my health best, and I went to medical school, so I know your health best, which I think is a true
ego play.
It's ego play, but it's also like you know your body best in terms of describing like what is the quality of your pain like? How often does it happen? How long has this been happening? How is it disrupting you? Reading, like listening to a podcast about like how a kidney works is not the same as being a nephrologist. So I think that
Agreed.
also it becomes a tension.
Yes.
Right now, in particular, with the amount of misinformation and kind of like questioning of health authority that is systemic and great.
I agree. And I think, to take it one step further too, I think it's very magnified in women's health.
Yes.
Probably because women's health is disgustingly under-researched, underfunded, overlooked all the time.
Yes.
So you have these patients that are getting dismissed time and time again and then are just angry as shit. But you got to give grace where grace is due, and you don't know everything. And just because a doctor might not know everything also does not mean that all doctors are bad. It just meant that that doctor didn't have what's going on in your body and their scope of deep understanding.
Yeah. No, I think that the parts where there are gaps and now underfunding in healthcare and historic problems and harms that were done I wrote a Substack on this recently, are then used to like sell products like different supplements or different like cortisol balancing, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure you've gotten so much stupid autoimmune shit on your TikTok that have pissed you off more than me.
It makes me, like if I'm on prednisone and it's 2 a.m. and I'm having pain insomnia, I will comment on those videos, and it
As
is
you should,
not
queen.
me. It's Victoria, my prednisone alter ego, who's a bitch that comes out and she's like
that.
keyboard warrior-ing. Don't talk about all doctors like that. My dad's really good.
It's like, but you could not have any. Have you considered that if you took their cortisol adrenal supplement milkshake once every day for $100
I'd
a
be
month,
cured?
you'd be cured?
I mean,
Us doctor, we don't want you to know that. I'm sorry, Preston. I will stop
you've been
going
gatekeeping.
on. I've been gatekeeping.
God, the secret's out. Margaret, hear why you have to do this. So the next one on our list is AMA. What is it and why it's bad?
Can I tell you a funny story about AMA?
Yeah, my first question was, have you ever left AMA?
One time.
Diva.
Oh, spicy.
One
and
time.
for anyone who's listening, it stands for against medical advice.
It's not good and you don't want to do it, and it's bad to have in your chart, and insurance companies really don't like it. So I wouldn't suggest. But I did go at AMA once. I had been admitted into the hospital. It was a team that was rounding on me that I'd had before, that had a doctor that told me that the only thing wrong with me was a leg length discrepancy. I asked to have a different team round on me, and they said no. And I was like, I'm not putting myself through the finance or emotional burden of having this jerk off tell me that I have a leg length discrepancy and him not helping me with his flare up. So I just packed up my shit and I left. And not super proud of that moment, but also a little bit proud of that moment.
Well, we've both told you that we've been like, well, you're going to just have to deal. So all of us, we're doing confessions today.
Big confessions. My AMA funny story for you is one time I put an AMA box on my Instagram, being a Ask Me Anything. And my uncle and my aunt are also in medicine, and they called my parents frantically saying, what is Alexandra doing? Why is she not listening to her doctors?
This is my AMA. I'm actively live streaming leaving the hospital. And you can ask me anything about it.
Ask me anything why AMA. It's just AMA squared. So my co-ed soccer team is actually called AMAFC. Because I think it's funny. It's made up of all doctors.
You have to get creative.
Yeah.
What do you think about when patients go AMA?
There are some times where this is I guess a confession. Like, I've thought the patient's safe to discharge, but like the attending for whatever reason wants to keep wants to keep them. And there's like maybe some concern about liability, or they want to like make sure that this like extra test comes back.
Yeah.
And as I'm like handing them the paperwork to sign, in my head I'm like, go off, queen. Like, you've got like, there have been times, and then there's other times where I'm just like, bro, this is not like, this is not how you want to go. Trust me. Like,
A lot of backfires if you do that one.
yeah. So I think, I guess, to be open about it, like there's a lot of, I think, like mixed emotions when a patient leaves AMA, because there's a
Rightly
huge
so.
part of you. Yeah, there's a huge part of you like wants the best for them, and you know that they're going against care that's going to be sometimes life-saving or really like life-improving. And then also, like, when a patient leaves AMA, that's like a lot less work for you. So it's like you simultaneously feel like sorrow, sympathy, and relief. You know, I don't know, Margaret, if you've ever felt. Is this bad? Like, if
I'm dead that you just said it's less work for you.
I mean,
No.
well, this gets to the burnout part of this, like, which is like, I don't think all of these like systemic parts, that's like people, by the way, the specialties that people are very publicly comfortable hating on often have a higher predominance in modern medicine of women, and often have more emotional labor involved in their work, and are underpaid relative to other specialties. Now, there are a lot of people who work in the hospital who should have dignity and work and fair pay that do not have the same salary as doctors. I won't say that's not true. And people are like, why can't I get a primary care doctor? Why can't I get a good, like a thoughtful rheumatologist or like
They're so underpaid.
pediatrician or psychiatrist who actually listens? And it's like, they're underpaid. If they're wanting to stay in research and do systemic stuff and want to stay academic, they're double underpaid, because you make like half
Mhm.
in academics,
And they're
versus
less
otherwise.
patient facing.
And they're less patient facing. So I guess I think that I did this like ethics fellowship my second year in residency. And like one of the conversations we had was, how much can you dehumanize someone in the process of making them into a physician and expect them to have empathy? Because we know that empathy goes down from middle of med school, like basically when you start clinical stuff, but predominantly in residency. And
Do you have to take an empathy class at the end?
no.
That's
We just take like an ethics
information
class.
I found.
Yeah. I mean, we have like patient, like I think we talk about empathy and stuff throughout med school, but no. The point of this being is they're bad actors in healthcare, like in everything. But if you have a systemic level thing that is increasing suicide rates, is making people not go into these patient-facing and emotional labor-heavy specialties, then I do think, not on an individual level, but on like community level, if you didn't vote for this type of healthcare to matter, then let's not be super duper, not an individual level. This is my rant, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
But like, then don't be
Go off.
surprised that like no one wants to go into it. Like if you,
Yeah.
it's like you have to be in med school. It's like people who are going to primary care and psychiatry and peds are treated like they're like saints and heroes. That's great that people want to do that out of the goodness of their heart. But if you make it only that, we're not going to have enough people doing it. And you're also not going to be making it a sustainable career to have good care all the time for these complex problems that we're talking about.
I totally agree with you. Yeah.
That's my AMA rant. It feels unrelated, but it's like what Preston said of like, well, it's less work for me. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a fact. You know, you have so much work you have to get through in the day, and you're staying late, and then that's one less person to round on. And you like feel bad that you feel relieved by it.
Yep.
You know?
I don't think
You're
you
like-
should feel bad about that, though. That's not your guilt or burden to carry.
But that is
Yeah.
the thing in healthcare. I feel like, especially in some parts of healthcare, it's like that is so part of your training, is that like my
Mhm.
friends who are in pediatrics are like, the like culture of pediatrics training is you should feel so lucky that you have the privilege of taking care of children. And so if you're tired, if you're experiencing what you experienced, right, in your job in finance,
Mhm.
while you're making much making
Much
very, very
less
little,
money.
it is frowned upon to not kind of show an outward face of like, what a great thing that I get to do. I get to serve the kids.
I mean, yeah.
And
That makes sense.
So I think there's a lot, like, in terms of, I don't want, and I frankly been treated very well by my like training so far. Like I feel we did a burnout episode and I'm not very burnt out.
Good.
But I grew up around a primary care doctor and 2 siblings who are also in medicine. And
Yeah. You have a different bar.
yeah, it's like, how do we
For
create
equilibrium.
this care that patients want,
Mm-hmm.
and who actually gets what patients are prioritized in our current system?
Well, I think
Sorry,
it's a good
Preston.
segue into to kind of the final part, which is what does it mean to be a good patient? This is something that Alex talks a lot about struggling with. And I think this has been kind of the theme of our episode in a lot of ways is how do I win at whatever I do, whether it's finance or private equity or content creation. And now we have the ultimate victory is like, how do I win at being a patient? So, so Alex, I'm curious, how would you define a good patient as someone who's like chronically in that role, I guess?
So I have like 2 different thought modes on it. One is very unique to me.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in medicine, having a dad who was very good at his job. I think I
Mhm.
like idolized doctors, and I like every doctor had that like fatherly role to
Transference.
me.
Yeah.
Transference. So I'd be like, please love me. Tell me I'm doing a good job. You're like my dad.
Dad number 5, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll talk about that with my therapist later. No, but I think it was, I wanted to show that I was doing all the things, that I was working really hard at my health. I was, taking the steps that I could to control what I could to make myself feel better so that they knew I was
Mhm.
always
Mm.
striving to get healthier. I never wanted to be the patient that complained about pain. And I did never want to be the patient that was sitting on their ass and had the doctors saying, like, if she just did this, I think she would feel better.
Mm.
So with those 2 things in mind, I like grit through pain probably more often than I should, which catches up to me and I get in trouble. That's when CRPS flares up.
Mhm.
And second is I think I'll probably stay quieter about reporting different symptoms or whatnot because I want to just take a more scientific approach and give it enough time until I figure out like, oh, is this medicine working for me or not? And then we can have a conversation on it. Like, I know you're stressed and overburdened and worked. And like, I saw my dad go through that. So like, I have this very weird interaction with medicine, I think. When I think of other patients trying to be a good patient, I think it's to prove that they're sick enough to deserve the care that they so desperately want.
Mm.
Because with chronic illness, you get told so many times that you're not sick enough or your labs are normal or you should just get married or what, however funny thing we
Mhm.
want to say.
Yeah.
It's the same sentiment of if I don't perform sick in a certain way, I don't get the care that I so desperately want and deserve, candidly. So those are the 2 different strains. I just have a fucked up brain and take it one step further because
Mhm.
competitive.
I guess I should say with my patients who I work with, which psychiatric illness is often chronic.
Yeah.
I feel like so much of it, regardless, is like relational in that, like, whenever I switch like training timelines or whatever, and I have to like leave my patients, there's so much that I think happens that impacts good prescribing in psychiatry, but also in anyone that has chronic pain or chronic symptom management. It's not this is psychiatry and it's all in your head, but it's like how well we know each other is such a
Yeah.
crucial part of feeling safe, I think, for patients.
Yeah. I mean, you already feel so unsafe in your body. I think it's probably why my botched spinal surgery was so impactful to me. It's because like I already feel unsafe in my body. I have trusted and idolized providers for my entire life. And I had somebody go above and beyond what their scope and training was and hurt me.
Yeah.
And that made me further unsafe in my body and further scared.
And the other part of the relational thing, and then Preston, I'm curious what your reflection is on this, is in that relationship, my patients and I feel like come to know what we need to work on for them. And so for you, it sounds like there's some perfectionism and some like wanting yourself to overfunction, right? And so
100%.
you might be the type of patient that I say, I know I ask you every month, like, oh, do you need refills on this PR as needed medication for the pain? And you say, no, I'm good. I only used it once. But when we talked about your pain, you were like, oh, yeah, it was this, whatever. And I might know you as like, you're someone who underreports and kind of bears more than even from a like, not even philosophical, just from like a physiology perspective, like,
Yes.
oh, well, we should treat that more. So to you, I may encourage you be like, I know you're only going to want to take it once in the next month. I'm going to encourage you. A challenge for me is to take it 3 times. So in the
Yes.
second and third days, whatever.
This is a
yeah.
very real thing that I've dealt with.
Yep.
Going on pain medication was something I really struggled with because I had such a perception of like that meant failing.
Yes.
I was falling victim to my pain. And I was then not in control anymore. And bless my sweet husband's heart, who has zero background in medicine, but boy, maybe he should have gone in that direction, sat down with me and would be like, Alex, a 7 out of 10 pain would make most people like, let's put this out of the chronic illness perspective. Let's make you see past like your own built up ideas of what pain should or should not look like or how it should or should not be treated. Let's just talk about like being comfortable and being happy and like, can you do that and take pain medication, and will that still allow you to feel in control, happy, proud of yourself as a patient? It took a lot of work, but
and there are other people who like maybe they've been housebound for a long time, that there's a lot of work we have to do around like pain avoidance and behavioral activation. That doesn't mean we still don't need compassion there and to do that at the right pace. And it doesn't mean, people go through different phases, I feel like, in how they relate to symptoms and other things that are going on. But
nothing straight.
Again, that is this like, you need clinicians, and I think almost more importantly, multidisciplinary teams across expertise that are sustainable enough jobs that people stay in the same clinic and have enough time to see you and can know you and work with you on that. Like that is when change happens with these things. And that is so much of that is out of a patient's control.
My podcast episode last week was like when to feel comfortable and confident saying no in your medical journey. And one of them was with a provider if they are not collaborating with your entire team. You have to have that like relationship trust, at least on that side, in order to get good care systemically throughout your medical journey.
So I was reflecting on like if I ever view patients as good or bad, and I think I usually just internalize if like the treatment isn't working well. So like I see them as like so complicated that I'm like, I just don't think I'm good enough to help this person. Like I think Margaret, you resonate with that. Like, so I wonder if like the way we see it, or at least as like psychiatrists, is like there aren't necessarily good or bad patients, but there are bad relationships, Yeah. And we'll kind of say like, the therapeutic alliance with this patient is shot. And sometimes that does happen based off of, a myriad of circumstances. But then sometimes someone can come in and reconstruct that good relationship with them for whatever reason, because we're dealing constantly with the complexes of like human interaction and trust. And sometimes it could be as simple as like they're like, from the same state or something. And then that's like a way into the door. And now we can have like a good relationship and then they can get better. But like when I'm going through like my clinic panel, I don't think I've ever like thought to them, even with like challenging patients or not challenging, that's actually how I view them. Like this patient is challenging in the sense that like it's going to be a challenge for me to like give them care that's going to like help improve them. But I've never like come around to saying like, oh, bad patient, like F for the day, like, you
That's
don't
a
get a
good
gold star on the
perspective.
way out. Like I'm just like, man, like what could I do better to like get through to them or to help them or to make a difference for them?
I think from a dynamic perspective, I think I feel that. So this is ahead for you, Preston. Like I less feel that like I'm doing something wrong, but something that my supervisor and I will talk about sometimes is like there are some patients, there's situations that can be challenging sort of regardless, but also the recognition that not every therapist or psychiatrist or primary care doctor has all the right ingredients for every single patient. And so sometimes the question is, does this connect enough? Is part of what we're struggling with rightness of fit, which we talk about that ad nauseum for psychiatry, but I think is true and was what Preston's getting at of like, I don't think good, bad as much as having kind of some comfort in like, I'm a good therapist and psychiatrist and no single person has everything that someone might need to be supported in their health. And so maybe we think about collaborative care, we think about referring out like elsewhere, or like there's a clinician I know who would be a great fit for this case, who this is their population of interest. So there's a natural kind of connection and investment at the start.
I think that's like hitting the nail on the head. It's a relationship and also like a knowing where your limits are, and a patient also needing to understand and respect those limits, not just in like knowledge basis or anything like that. But if a provider is way overworked and you have a super complicated medical case that they have read one page in a textbook 25 years ago. Probably like not going to be a great relationship basis emotionally, and then also like knowledge basis not going to be
It'd
a great
probably be
fit.
more like 5 Anki cards these days, but yeah.
You can get the AI doctors on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Alex. This is kind of the part with our guests where we want to give you a chance to shout out any of your current projects that you're working on or your different social media handles. So what do you want to plug? The floor's yours. Like,
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. This was a treat. Like being able to talk to doctors as a patient and growing up as I did, like this is such a big treat and honor to me. So thank you so much for letting me share my story and have these conversations. I think patients will hear this and feel like they learned something and maybe walk away with a little bit more compassion for themselves and their providers. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. My platform is my name, Alexandra Wildeson. My podcast is called Calling in Sick Podcast. Super creative podcast.
Ours is How to Be Patient.
We're just on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
I'm working on an app right now called Calling In. It'll be a community educational platform for patients to go and find people that have a similar like impact of their disease to their life. So you can find different resources, friendships, stuff like that. And like we talked about at the top of the show, I just was in a TV show, so stay tuned on my socials if you want to watch it. Comes out in a month, and it'll be on YouTube.
What's the show called?
I'm still under NDA, so I can't tell you what it's
That's
called.
exciting.
Whoa.
Big business.
Okay.
You should feel like you won by being able to say that. I'm still under an NDA.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
Sorry, I'm under NDA.
Thank you all so much for listening. I've been leaning into my southern.
He's in his cowboy Carter.
I'm saying reckon a lot more. Yeah. How was the show? We always want to hear what you think. This is our first time having a patient on, but we like getting to explore these patient stories with y'all. If you want to, If you want to come chat with us at our Human Content Podcast family, you can find us on IG and TikTok at Human Content Pods, or you can contact us directly at howtobepatientpod.com. You can always see more from me, it's Preston, and Margaret, who's like the co-host, at our respective socials. So I'm on It's Presro, Margaret's at Bad Art Every Day on Instagram, TikTok, and Substack behind the paywall. Shut up, paywall.
Preston won't pay the paywall.
Yeah, I know. I actually don't know what's on her blog.
It's a Preston,
refuse to pay.
It's a Preston diss page.
It could be, and I would never find out. Yeah. If you want to see more of this podcast, full videos are always available on my YouTube, posted each week on Mondays. Thanks again for listening. We're your hosts, Preston Roche and Margaret Duncan. Our executive producers are Preston Roche, Margaret Duncan, Will Flannery, Kristen Flannery, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor and engineer is Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benz-V. To learn more about our program disclaimer and ethics policy, submission verification and licensing terms, and our HIPAA release terms, go to howtobepatientpod.com or reach out to us at howtobepatient@human-content.com with any questions or concerns. How to Be Patient is a human content production.
Bye, y'all.
How to be patient.
Thank you for watching. If you want to see more of us, or if you want to see, this is Lilac, she's my cat. She's going to be waving her hand at one of the floating boxes, which will lead to more episodes. Lilac, point to the other episodes. Lilac doesn't know what the internet is, but I swear they're there. They probably exist for real. But in the meantime, I'm just going to pet Lilac, and then I'm going to go dance in the background.